Hey you guys, welcome back to Flickers of Fear. This is our Monster March theme this month. So what I've been trying to do, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but doing the theme for the months, that's kind of like a new thing. But what I've tried to do, not always, like sometimes it doesn't work out like this, but I post 2 of these a week. So earlier in the week, like on Thursdays, I try to do like a newer film, as in like a 21st century, and then on Saturdays, I try to do like an old one, usually like from 60s, 70s, 80s, something like that. So, because I like to kind of have old and new, you know how I do. But yeah, so we're doing Monster March this month. And here was a movie that I had been wanting to see for a while because it's Amicus. This was actually the last Amicus film that they made before the studio folded. And it's not an anthology. I think I'm going to do anthologies for April, now that I'm thinking about it. Although we reviewed a lot of anthologies, but there's still a shit ton out there that we haven't done yet. So yeah, I might do that next month. But I wanted to do this one because it's been on Shudder for a really long time, and it keeps coming up, and Peter Cushing is in it, and I was just kind of like, okay, well that sounds like something I need to see. So I finally got around to watching this. This is The Beast Must Die from 1974. This movie is okay. I have to say, how you feel about this is gonna probably be predicated upon how you feel about real gimmicky kind of stuff. I think this movie didn't need to have the gimmick, but honestly, I kind of like it. I found it kind of endearing. It's the gimmick is very William Castle, which I'll get into in a minute. But yeah, so this came out in 1874. The director of it was Paul Annett, who I think, as far as I'm aware, this is his only film credit. I think he normally did TV, like EastEnders and Grange Hill and stuff like that. So, you know, soap opera type stuff on British TV. So I think he was mostly known for doing that. But so I think this was the only film that he ever directed. And this was actually based on a short story called There Shall Be No Darkness by James Blish. Now, what this is essentially, and everybody that worked on this film has said this, so it was actually completely deliberate. It's essentially a horror take on an Agatha Christie story, most specifically, And Then There Were None, also known as 10 Little Indians. So it's a murder mystery, like a parlor mystery, except with a werewolf. Okay. So that's what we have going on. Now, as I said, there's a lot of kind of like big stars in this. The main guy in it is Calvin Lockhart, who the whole time I'm watching this movie, I'm like, God damn it. It's like, who the fuck? I've seen that dude. And I went to his IMDb page. He's been in a fuck ton of stuff. He was in like so much stuff, especially like a lot of blaxploitation stuff in the 60s and 70s. But I recognized him from Coming to America, Wild at Heart, and Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. He was in those 3 movies, so I said, okay, well, that must have been where I've seen him before, because I've seen those a million times. But that's where but he'd been in a bunch of stuff prior to that as well. Peter Cushing in this as well, as I already mentioned. Charles Gray is in this, who, a lot of it's into Bond films. I know him as, the guy from Rocky Horror Picture Show. And a very young Michael Gambon is in this as well, which I barely recognized him, because I've seen him in a shit ton of stuff, but I was used to seeing him like as an older man, and he's fairly young in this, so it took me a second, and I was just kind of like, oh yeah, okay, that's who that is. So what you have going on with this, there's a guy, Calvin Lockhart is the main character, and he plays this kind of multi-millionaire and super hunter named Tom Newcliffe. Now, I guess this makes a little bit of an homage to like Most Dangerous Game, because I think that was deliberate, like where they were trying to say, oh, he's hunted every animal on Earth, maybe including people. I don't really know. They don't go into that. But one thing that he wants to hunt is a werewolf, and he has determined kind of somehow, if they said in the movie, I don't remember if they said, but he's determined that a group of his, like among his group of acquaintances, one of those motherfuckers is a werewolf. And so he invites them all to his palatial estate to, like, during a full moon, like 3 days of the full moon, to determine which one it is so that he can kill it. Now, at the very beginning of the movie, and this, I kind of want to get into this too, because I kind of feel like some people said that this is maybe where the werewolf gimmick maybe kind of shoots the movie in the foot, because you know that one of these characters is a werewolf, like, from the very, very beginning. Because literally the first part of the movie, and this was not the director's idea, by the way, this was actually the producers that wanted to do this, because, like I said, Amicus was kind of going on the toilet at this point. This was their last film, so they really wanted this movie to make money. So apparently they thought that a gimmick would be the best way to do that. So at the very beginning of this movie, it basically says, this is like a detective story where you are the detective. One of the guests at this, party or whatever is a werewolf. Can you guess which one it is? And then it says at the beginning, it says there'll be a werewolf break after we've shown you all the clues. And, you have to guess who the werewolf is. And indeed, like about 50-ish minutes into the movie, there is a werewolf break that I think is 30 seconds, a minute, something like that. And it's just like ticking. Did you guess who the werewolf was? Is it this person? Is it this person? And, so there was that kind of whole thing. But one thing that I did think was interesting was that if it didn't have that gimmick, which I kind of, like I said, I thought it was kind of endearing. But I will argue that if you didn't have that gimmick, and if you didn't sell it, because they did kind of sell, like, The Beast Must Die, the poster art, you could tell it was going to be like a werewolf movie, because it was like a full moon on it with like kind of a werewolfy looking head in the moon. If they had sold this more as a murder mystery and kind of downplayed the werewolf thing, I wonder if that might have, like, marketed a little bit better. I don't know. I'm blue skying here, because I do kind of think the way that it opens is you have Calvin Lockhart's character, and it appears that he's being pursued through these woods by a bunch of dudes, like, in helicopters, like, with fucking machine guns and shit like that. And they're all, like, chasing him. And then he keeps, like, falling down. And he's like, oh, there's a camera in that tree. And there's a microphone, like, stuck down here in the ground. And all this other stuff. And you're just like, what the fuck is going on? So you say, is this guy the werewolf? You know what I mean? I thought we were going to, like, get a chance to figure out who it was. But you find out that what he's actually doing, all these dudes that are chasing him, they're not really chasing him. They're just, he has set up his mansion and all the ground surrounding the mansion as essentially they put like they put cameras, they put microphones, they put like motion sensors, they put all this shit around there, because when he invites the werewolf or the party to his house, whoever's the werewolf, he doesn't want them escaping. So he has like essentially established this big like perimeter of technology, and he has like this one guy who's watching all of it, and he's got all the TVs and everything like that, so that when the werewolf like wolfs out, they don't escape. So he has like all these, like dudes, like helicopters and shit like that, like on retainer, to take out the werewolf in case he is not able to. Spoiler alert, doesn't work out as well as he expected, as things usually don't in this type of situation. So again, you kind of have that happen, and then he addresses his guests, all of whom are suspects in this whole werewolf mystery that you're doing. So you have Charles Gray, who's playing like kind of a diplomat, but he got in trouble. So most of these people have something, much like a murder mystery, any kind of murder mystery. Everybody around, every single person is like sketch in some way. So any one of them could legitimately be the werewolf. Most of their sketchiness involves, oh, well, you were in this one town, or every time you were in this town, like people would disappear and turn up with their throats, torn out and shit like that, which, that is a little suspicious. I'll give you that. But, so that it's mostly that kind of thing. So, so Charles Gray plays a diplomat. Then you have a husband and wife named Jan and Davina. And I guess Jan was like a piano, like a concert pianist, like quite famous. And Davina is his wife. And then you have a guy named Paul, who is an artist, but he said that he started out in medical school, and as a supposed prank, like he and his fellow medical students like decided they were gonna like eat human flesh. Like they didn't kill anybody, they said, but they were just like, what the hell? There's a cadaver right there. I mean, you know what I mean? So like I said, everybody has some like kind of sketchy shit about them. And then Peter Cushing, who is fantastic in everything. I kind of wish he was in this a little bit more, although he does get a lot of screen time and he does get a lot of lines and stuff, because he's actually an archaeologist and his specialty is werewolves, like lycanthropy. So he's kind of the one that provides a lot of the exposition about werewolfery. And interestingly, and I guess, like I said, they're trying to make everybody seem like they could be the werewolf. So when he's talking about werewolfery, like at dinner, he's talking about how werewolves are just like victims, you know what I mean? Because they can't help it. Like, they can't help being a werewolf and like wolfing out and killing their family or whatever, like whenever it's a full moon. So I think they were trying to make that it's just like, oh, well, he wants like sympathy for the werewolf. So obviously he must be the werewolf. But I never thought that he was the werewolf, because I was sitting there thinking, would they really do that to Peter Cushing? Like, make him turn into a werewolf? I'm like, I don't really think they would. But you know what I mean? I don't like... But yeah, but so he does get a lot of that kind of shit about it. So basically, the rest of the movie is, like I said, essentially like a parlor mystery where they're trying to figure out which person is the werewolf. Now, one thing that I will say is that, one, I kind of liked the angle where he had all this technology, like around where the whole grounds were under surveillance, essentially. But it ends up not really working out, because at some point, like the werewolf, which that's another thing. And I'm not going to shit on them too hard for this, Amicus, because look, they made some fantastic movies. They made some of my favorite horror anthologies ever. You know, they made other ones too. I think they made The Skull, which was also with Peter Cushing, which I think we reviewed. But you know, they were going down the tank at this point. They didn't have a lot of money, I'm sure. And you can kind of tell from this movie, the werewolf is basically just a big dog with, it looks like maybe they put kind of like extra fur on it, so it would look like a big black wolf. It doesn't look terrible, but they didn't really try to, but you can, it's obviously a dog, you know what I mean? So it's just kind of like the werewolf is trying to like attacking, and everybody's just like, who's a good boy, who's a good, you know what I mean? It's like that kind of thing. So it kind of takes a little bit of the menace out of it. We're just like, oh, look how cute he is. So it's that. But like I said, I'm not going to shit on him too hard, because, you know, if you don't have the money to do like a really good werewolf, it's probably better to just go the dog route, because at least that's an actual animal, than try to like put some cheap ass looking appliances on somebody that's going to look like ass. So, you know, so I'm not going to shit on him too hard for that. But the thing about it is that the technology doesn't really end up factoring into it all that much, because at one point, because this takes place over 3 nights, at one point, the werewolf, or the dog, crashes through this skylight and kills the guy that's, like, monitoring all the shit. So at which point, like, the technology is still kind of working, but they don't really have anybody to collaborate with, you know, nobody's, like, watching it. So it kind of, like, all goes to hell. Another thing, too, is that you can kind of tell that, because here's the thing, you would think that you were like, okay, one of these 6 people or whatever is a werewolf for sure. You invite them all to your house, you know, it's going to be a full moon. It seems like, to me, the easiest thing to do would just be to, like, lock them all in a room until the full moon comes, and the one that turns into a werewolf, you know, you could even chain them to the walls if you wanted to, like, just they wouldn't hurt each other. You know what I mean? I mean, if you're really that sure, you just lock them all in a room. Don't just let them wander around loose, which is what he does. I mean, he essentially just treats them like dinner guests. They try to do these little things where, and this kind of, it's funny because it kind of reminded me of The Thing, where they were like putting the blood in the petri dishes and then putting the putting the heat to it to see whose blood would jump. It kind of reminded me of that. But they have a thing because Peter Cushing says, oh, well, you know, silver is poisonous to wolves. They can't even touch it, and they'll instantly die, which, okay. I've never really heard that. I mean, yeah, obviously silver, but I thought it had to be like, they had to ingest it, or it had to like go into their body. I didn't think just like touching it would kill them, but okay. I'll allow it. So he's like, okay, well, they can't even touch it. So Tom Newcliffe is kind of like, well, this candlestick right here is silver, so we'll just pass it around the table. But various things, so they do that and nobody dies. And then Peter Cushing says, oh yeah, but also wolfsbane pollen has to be in the air at the same time, which to me, that seemed like it needed some workshopping. You know what I mean? Because it seemed like you set up all these really easy like werewolf tests, and then there's always like some reason why they didn't work. I was like, I kind of feel like that could have been changed up some, you know what I mean? Because yeah, if the silver didn't kill anybody, I said, oh, well, obviously Peter Cushing doesn't know what he's talking about then, because the silver didn't kill anybody. But then they added this thing, and I was just kind of like, okay, really? All right, whatever. But so there's that. And then there's like reasons why certain people won't touch and everything like that. So as it goes on, you can tell that they're leaning really hard into making you think that this one particular person is the werewolf, which led me to believe that guy is absolutely not the werewolf, because they really, really want me to think that he is. So I'm just kind of like, okay, well, I'm scratching them off the list then, because there's no way, because they're being like way too obvious about it. Now, I don't know if I want to spoil this or not. I mean, even though it's very old, it's from 1974. I don't know. I guess I can, but because I guess it's not. I will say this is not a great movie, especially like as far as like Amicus and, you know, their competitor Hammer. They made like many, many, many better ones than this. It's an okay werewolf movie, and I like the idea of making essentially like an Agatha Christie parlor mystery, but with a werewolf. I think that's really cool. But I'm not sure how well it was executed, just because of like stuff like I said. I don't even mind that the werewolf is just like a dog. That doesn't bother me. Like I said, I would rather see that than see like some cheap ass latex appliances or just like an actor running around with fur stuck on their face. I think, you know, it's at least it's a dog, it's a wolf, it's close enough. You know what I mean? It's an actual animal, and that's fine. But I just didn't like how kind of contrived the setup was, because as I mentioned, it seemed like if that was a situation that you were ever in, you know what I mean? Not that you would be, but if you really were, it's like, oh, one of my friends is a werewolf. It seems like there would be much less convoluted ways to discover that fact rather than what we were shown. You know what I mean? So it kind of like strained credulity a little bit, where I was like, why don't you just lock them all in one big room so they can't get out? It's like problem solved, easy peasy. First night, full moon, somebody wolfs out, bang, they're dead. You know what I mean? But he just lets them like wander around the grounds by themselves, even though he's like, hey, where's so-and-so? Like when something happens, and then they have to go find him. You know, but then, like I said, the whole test with the silver candlestick, and then they're saying, oh, no, never mind, there has to be wolfsbane pollen. And then, you know, Tom Newcliffe is like, oh, well, I happen to have some wolfsbane growing in my greenhouse. And it's like, whew, now I blew the wolfsbane pollen into the air. Now everybody touched the silver thing. And then there's like reasons why they can't touch the silver thing. And it's just like this whole thing. So I kind of feel like that could have probably been left out, or it could have been rewritten to be like less convoluted, because again, I was just kind of like, come on, you guys. I mean, this seems like it should be much easier than it is. And essentially, the werewolf being just like a dog, and them like outsmarting what is supposedly like one of the world's greatest hunters. Again, it didn't come across as very believable. Now, I'm not saying that I didn't like this movie, because I did. I thought it was kind of fun. It does drag somewhat, and like I said, some of the stuff is just so contrived that I couldn't really get into it, because I'm just like, really? You know what I mean? There was that. But I really kind of liked all the campy, overacted, particularly Calvin Lockhart, I think was like kind of, he was very, very like over the top and theatrical, and I kind of dug that. Also, he wears a shirt at one point in this, which is one of the coolest shirts I've ever seen. It was like, it looked like black, I don't know if it was silk, but it looked like black silk, but then it had like this silver, like really, really shiny, like, so not like sparkly necessarily, but like shiny metallic, and it had like these little this little trim around the collar, and then it had just like these really, really shiny kind of like two stripe type situations or symbols or something going down there. It was really, really cool looking. I just like really liked the cut of it, and just like the black and silver was really nice. I just thought I would bring that up. But yeah, so I really liked that. Peter Cushing was great in it. He's always great in everything, and it was cool to see, like I said, Michael Gambon and some of these other actors like Charles Gray and stuff that you've seen in other stuff, but it's kind of like fun to speculate that it's like maybe they're a werewolf and shit. Also, this has, which maybe undercuts the horror a little bit, but I don't care because I dug it. Especially during the beginning when Tom Newcliffe is kind of testing out his, you know, werewolf trap technology kind of perimeter thing he has going. It has like the funkiest, like, Waka Chicka 70s kind of like music, and it's just like so hilarious. So it's like, if you like if you didn't know this was a werewolf movie, the opening scene with this kind of like disco, like funky, you would probably think it was a blaxploitation. And I kind of think that they wanted to go with that direction, because like I said, this was 1974 and blaxploitation movies were kind of all the rage. So I kind of think that they wanted to do something sort of like old school horror, but with a blaxploitation edge to it. So I kind of got that vibe, because the first part of it is very much like a blaxploitation movie with the music and the way it's set up. Before you even know it's like a horror, it's kind of more seems like an action movie at the first part of it. But then it goes again like more into an old fashioned Hammer style or old Amicus style, you know, parlor mystery, like Agatha Christie, something like that, where it's just like a bunch of people in one location. One of them is a murderer, in this case a werewolf, and you're trying to like figure out who it is. Okay, so the big question I'm sure that you all are asking, or not, I don't, probably not. Did Jenny guess who the werewolf was? That's not an easy question to answer, because I sort of did, but they kind of throw you a curveball, though. I will say that as the movie goes on, the dude that they're very obviously setting up is like, oh, that guy's got to be the werewolf. I'm like, well, then he's obviously not. It's like a Giallo film where the person that they're just be like, it's this person. They're so guilty. And I'm just like, it's not that person. Just stop it. We're on to that. We're on to that trick. It's never the most obvious person. And so the most obvious person in this, I was like, okay, well, it's definitely not that person. But then they kind of do a thing after they do the werewolf break. They even have like the narrator and everything. And like I said, the director was not a fan of this idea. He was like, really? Do we need the fucking gimmick? But the producer's like, yeah, we absolutely do. And I don't know if it helped. I mean, I think the movie did okay, maybe. But, you know, after that, you know, Amicus went out of business. So obviously, even if it did do okay, it didn't do well enough to save them. So there was that. I mean, it might have gone downhill anyway. I don't think the gimmick really mattered one way or the other. And honestly, I'd be interested to see it without it. But I do kind of like some of those cheesy-ass, like I said, William Castle type things, like the Tingler and all that kind of stuff like he used to do back in the old days, like in the 50s and 60s. So I kind of liked seeing that like in a more 70s sort of way. I did kind of guess, but as I said, they throw you a curveball in the sense that, and this is a spoiler, there's actually 2 werewolves, but one of them didn't become a werewolf until later. So if they are asking, did you guess who the original werewolf was? Yes, I did. But there's another one. So there's that. But you know what I mean? So I kind of guessed, but like I said, they pulled we did something different with it. So it's not like as straightforward as you might think, which, you know, fair enough. Because you don't want to be going, I guess that was lame. There was that kind of thing. But yeah, so is this worth watching? Yeah, I mean, it's campy. It's very 70s. If you like murder mysteries and you want to see kind of like a little different take on it, then you might be into it. If you like kind of like that kind of gimmicky sort of thing, like I said, Werewolf Break, I think this is and they really, really pushed that gimmick in the marketing as well. So if you like that kind of thing, which I kind of do, I think it's kind of cute, but you know, so if you want to see that, then you should like check it out. And if you like Amicus's other stuff, I think I like this slightly better than the Skull, but I don't know, that's hard to say, because I kind of did like the Skull as well. But Amicus definitely, in their last few years, their stuff wasn't as good, and especially their kind of like standalone films, I think they never got to the same level as their anthologies. I mean, anthologies seemed like that's what their big thing was, and they were really good at doing those. But this is absolutely worth watching if you're into kind of like low budget werewolf movies, stuff from the 70s. It's always worth watching for Peter Cushing, and like I said, there's a lot of other great actors in this as well. You know, so that if that sounds like it'd be worth your time, then absolutely watch it. I watched it on Shudder, you know, but I'm sure it's many other places as well. So if you've seen it, let me know what you thought about it in the comments. And that will do it for this episode of Flickers of Fear on our Monster March. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.